Okay, and Freud had an extremely sort of complicated theory about how the mind works and the way it's subdivided and the relationship between men and women. And um, he had these theories that he had these theories that people would reveal through mistakes, through errors, secrets of their personality, that their true self was hidden, but it would kind of sneak out and slip out in these funny ways. So I just think Freud's a really fascinating person. And Freud is one of like 15 writers I take really seriously. Freud, I take almost as seriously as I take Shakespeare. I really like this stuff. Um, so let's talk about Freud. So Freud um, has a piece where he talks about why art matters, and it's interesting. Now he's got an example of a story. He's going to summarize it real quick, but I just want to summarize it myself because it gets real confusing. In ancient Greek drama, Sophocles is an ancient Greek playwright. You may have heard of him before. He has a character named Oedipus. The play is called Oedipus Rex or Oedipus the King. Um, the play, it's from ancient Greece, back in Plato's day. The play is very very famous. You may have heard about it or know about it, but I'll give you a really quick summary. The play is Oedipus. Um, he he kills this dude on the road, just some random dude. Later on in his life, he solves the riddle of the Sphinx, which is a whole city is being messed up by this. There's a whole problem. He solves a problem in the city, and because he solves it, they make him king. And they give him he gets to marry the wife of the previous king and rule over the land, and things are going pretty great for Oedipus. Until one day a sort of plague strikes, and now he's got a new challenge. How is he going to get rid of the plague? Well, they say in order to fix the plague, you got to find out who killed the previous king, because something bad happened to the previous king. We don't know what. So Oedipus goes to find out what happened to the previous king. Um, and there's a whole complicated thing that happens. But basically, um, it turns out that random guy on the road that Oedipus killed, that was the king. And then actually, there was a prophecy that the king's son was going to kill the king. And so when Oedipus was a little tiny baby, his father, had a prophecy, heard a prophecy that he was going to be killed by his son, and so he gave his child to like a farmer and said, fucking kill this thing. Well, the farmer didn't. He felt bad for the little kid, and so he gave it away. And the kid was raised, didn't know who his father was, but was raised in the middle of nowhere. And of course, that's the kid that comes back to eventually kill the king, and the prophecy comes true. But of course, the fucked up thing in the play, the really upsetting thing in the play, is that when Oedipus became the king, he got the old king's wife. That's his mom. And so Oedipus has been having sex with his mother. He has two children with his mother. And when he finds out the truth, she hangs herself, and he stabs himself in the eyes and is blinded. And one of his children, by the way, is named Antigone. There's a whole great Greek play about her, and the Antigone play is a whole separate play. But it's a very famous play about um, a new king. Anyway, it's not worth summarizing. I'm not summarizing Antigone, but it's a very famous play. And it's great. You should read it. It's great. Oedipus and Antigone are two of the greatest works of world literature ever, and they're fantastic. Okay, so Freud wants to talk about this play, this ancient Greek play, Oedipus. Jocasta, by the way, is the name of the mom. That's going to come up. The point is, it's a story about a guy who accidentally kills his father and accidentally marries his mother and has children with her. And then he finds out, oh shit, I killed my dad. I didn't know who that was. Oh shit, I married my mom. I didn't know. Oh shit, I had sex with her. Oh shit, I had kids. And he pokes his own eyes out. And that's the end of the play. So Freud wants to talk about this play. So let's go see what Freud has to say about this play. It's one of the most famous things in Freud. All right, let's go take a look. Okay. In my experience, by the way, interpretation of dreams is where I'm getting this from. Freud wrote like 100, like 30 books. He wrote so many books. Interpretation of dreams is his most famous book. Do not get it. I kind of hate the interpretation of dreams. If you're going to start with Freud, don't read it. It's for starters, it's just gigantic. It's too big. Most of Freud's books are like 60, 70, 80 pages. Get one of those. Because Interpretation of Dreams is not his best book, and it's also like 500 pages long. So you can get something better and shorter. Get Civilization and its Discontents or Beyond the Pleasure Principle. Okay, let's go take a look at what Freud has to say. And so Freud says, in my experience, which is already extensive, the chief part in the mental lives of all children who later become psychoneurotics, these are people with mental problems, the chief role is played by the parents. So says most people who have mental problems, like maybe they're anxious or they're unhappy, he says it's the parents' fault. He says being in love with one parent and hating the other are among the essential constituents of the stock of psychical impulses which is formed at that time and which is of such importance in determining the symptoms of the later neurosis. So Freud has a theory. It's called the Oedipus complex, named after the guy from the play. And we'll talk about that more in a second. But Freud has a theory. And the theory, he says all children have, one of Freud's big things is most people thought that the sex lives of young people started around the time of puberty. But for Freud, there's a kind of weird sex life, mental sex thoughts that are happening with very, very small children, like 2 and 3 and 4 year olds. And he believed there was stuff cooking in here about sex. And so one of the things he says is that what he says is very normal in families for the child, a very small child, like 3 years old, to hate one parent and love the other. Now, Freud, when he says people, is usually talking about boys. He says this is true for all human beings everywhere, but he's really only talking about a group of, he's talking about the people he knows in, 19th century Vienna. So that's not necessarily the whole world population, but the idea is this. He thinks that young boys want to kill their fathers and they want to marry their mothers. He's talking about 4-year-old boys, like little kids. They want to marry mommy and they want to kill daddy. They hate daddy. They love mommy. The reason for this, in sort of, and this again makes more sense, although I think this is still a very useful idea, but maybe it makes more sense back then. But the idea for this is that the father, in the traditional households that Freud was looking at, the father was the one that laid down the rules. The father says, these are the rules, and if you break the rules, I'll punish you. And the mother is like the caregiver. Mommy loves you. Mommy's here to take care of you. Mommy feeds you. Mommy bathes you. Mommy takes care of you. And so this creates in children, Freud says, a desire to kill the father because kids don't want rules. They want to do whatever the fuck they want. They hate the rules. They don't want to be forced to go to bed. And also they want to be with mommy forever. Very recently, children were completely combined with mommy, during pregnancy, right? They're inside the mother's body. And the kid just kind of wants to return to that state because it was just the nicest, happiest time, Freud says. So Freud's idea is that young, little tiny boys want to kill their fathers and they want to marry their mothers. Again, because Freud has this idea that having sex with mom is like returning to the womb because that was the happy state in which the little fetus was floating around and getting all its needs met and it was happy, and then it got thrust out into the world where it was cold and there were rules you had to follow and you can't eat food whenever you want to. Anyway, so this is Freud's idea. It's called the Oedipus complex, and it's an interesting idea. The main takeaway I would say from it, though, there's a simple takeaway I think that's very, very useful for thinking about this, which is that for Freud, it's that kids' parents set a pattern in the lives of children, that the way they love and hate their parents sets a pattern that gets repeated for the rest of their lives. So Freud would say that a young man falling in love is essentially searching for a replacement mom. That's his idea. That in the old days, when there was a fetus inside mommy, or even as a very young child, mom took care of the little child, and that men are looking to replace mommy with a lover that they can have sex with, because of course they're not allowed to have sex with mom because of the rules laid down by the dad. So that's Freud's idea. It's that the patterns in childhood repeat later in life in these funny ways, so that the wife is really a replacement for the mother. And if that sounds fucked up, please consider for a second how often daughter-in-laws and mother-in-laws do not get along. Why? Because the mother feels replaced by the wife, and the wife feels threatened by the mom. We'll talk about that in the next video.